are delighted to be coming to you from Cape Town TV studios. My name is Paul Curry. I'm the Associate Director of the Urban Systems Unit at ICLEI Africa, and it's my utter delight to be facilitating this discussion as part of the Cape Town Food Dialogues, and we'll be broadening the conversation to hear from further colleagues across the continent. As said, today's session is effectively about championing the voices of cities in global food systems, and it is tangling with the ideas of urban food systems in the context of crisis. So it's called Governing Amid Crisis, How African Local Governments Are Taking Action on Food. It is taking place as part of the Cape Town Food Dialogues, which have had a fabulous set of events really to help us engage with food systems in different ways, both through having deep conversation about it, as well as through tasting, trying, and walking through the Cape Town food system to experience it in multiple ways. As said, we're going to broaden the conversation to hear from a number of cities across the continent, and the participation of our colleagues here is sponsored by the AfriFood Links project, which launched at the end of last year and is about driving substantive change in African urban food systems and really trying to change the narrative around food from production and agriculture to really engage with the types of ways that food systems are interacted with in the cities. How are we processing food to produce new products and new types of meals? How does the infrastructure of markets support traders to grow their businesses and to provide nourishing food to citizens? How do we deal with food waste? How do we make something out of food and organic waste, and then also food-related plastics, and actually turn that into a more circular and environmentally regenerative system? So the AfriFood Links project is a fabulous project of about 26 partners working in 65 plus cities and funded by the European Union as part of wider food systems programming across the continent and Europe. So by way of introduction, we're going to have an initial conversation with officers in local governments to share a bit on what their key challenges are and what they feel some of their successes have been. And then we're going to invite some of the partners of the AfriFood Links project who work deeply with local governments and multiple stakeholders in cities to share some of their reflections. So I'd like to invite our first four city officials speakers to turn on their cameras and join us in the room. We have Rosa Chieng, who's the Agri-Nutrition Coordinator in Kisumu County in Kenya. We've got Tamsin Faragher from the Resilience Department in City of Cape Town, South Africa. Onesmo Mandike, the Head of City Agriculture and Livestock in Arusha in Tanzania. And Eric Sawadogo, who's the Social Services Department Officer in Ouagadougou in Burkina Faso. So if I can ask you to join us. And we'll start with Rose, as we are just off a visit to Kisumu and missing our time together. If you can share with us, again, what the deep challenges have been in Kisumu's food system and what you're working on that you would like to share.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening. My name is Rose, as you rightfully said. We had a good excitement working together with you people in Kisumu, and we miss you so much. Everybody was excited, and we are still talking about you. So thank you so much for inviting me to this powerful forum. And some of the challenges that we have in Kisumu County. One, the issue of coming up or honoring the legal documents that we have in place. In agriculture, we have the food system, which is cutting across sister departments or ministries we are working with. We have those of health, education, and social services to cater for the aged. And another issue that we have that is affecting us, oh, Paul, how many minutes did you give me?
Let's start off with 3.5, and then we'll have further discussion together.
Okay. So I've said challenge is coming up for sponsorship of when you want to come up with the legal documents that are being a gap. And then the ones that we have already had, implementation is not 100%. Most of them still lie in the shelf. Passing them again, having them passed, but the local governments, even as we are working on them, sometimes at the assembly, sometimes becomes an issue. Then another one is on the officers that we have also. Most of the officers in the government are slimming, so we have a challenge reaching every other person we'd want, but we have a solution for that, which if allowed, probably I'll talk about it later. And another one is the high cost of inputs. Our inputs are quite a challenge for the people also to use. And finally, I would talk about the infrastructure. Is wide. We have the issue with the storage of the items that have been produced. That is at the farm or even at the markets where these things are being sold. And another thing is issue with the middlemen, those who help our farmers get their products to the market where they are required. Again, the prices becomes a challenge so that the farmers don't get actually enough of the profit of what they are supposed to get out of what they have grown. And finally, I would talk about I would talk about curriculum at the universities or the tertiary colleges. In Kenya or in, generally in Kenya now, when it comes to issues to do with the training in agriculture, some parts, some dockets were like, they were no longer required. Like when it comes to training a home economics officer or like agriculture extension and human ecology extension, who now deals with the nutritive part of the foods that we are producing. But then again, we are getting a solution to that. So these things were no longer valued at the universities and at the tertiary colleges. After some time, we have seen the gap, and now we are seeing how to bring them back now to the universities. At least this will now encourage even our youths now to get to appreciate the foods we are producing and even their consumption in the right way. Thank you.
Thanks, Rose. I think you've set the scene on a wealth of really interesting different types of issues. How do we get legal documentation up and working for us and not as a barrier? How do we get officers in cities to speak to each other? How do we get our infrastructure in the city working for better nutritional outcomes? And how do we excite new people to take on work in the food system, to work towards good nutrition? So I think with that foundation, I'd like to invite Tamsin to reflect a little bit as well on your work. What are the challenges you're seeing in Cape Town? I think some of this has resonated. And what are the solutions that you're discovering and putting forward?
Thanks, Paul. And it's lovely to see some of our sister and brother cities on the call again, who we're all together in Kisumu, so it's nice to see your faces. Cape Town has a slightly different approach to some of the other cities, and this is what's so cool about food systems is that, and looking at cities, is that each city is quite unique. Every city, even in South Africa, has a different food system, so the issues are slightly different. So we've taken, as part of the resilience department, a resilience response, or rather approach, which looks at a system, in this case a food system, and how it responds to shocks and stresses. Shocks and stresses could be droughts, unrest, Load shedding, for those who don't know what load shedding it is, South Africa is experiencing load shedding. It's limited supply of electricity, so only certain hours of the day is it available. And a lot of the work that we've done over the last couple of years, which started in 2019, has been to understand how shocks and stresses affect Cape Town's food system. You know, does it just kind of wobble, or does it actually break? And since 2019, we've had COVID, we've had load shedding, we've had the drought before COVID. So we've been quite busy. And the issues that we've realized through this process, through experiencing the shocks and stresses, and through also exploring scenarios, is that, you know, on the one hand, we have surplus that we can actually export, but on the other hand, we have access issues and stunting and obesity and overweightness and quite significant health issues. So it's been trying to understand, you know, if we've got so much food, why is it that people are still hungry? You know, whilst that has been the challenge during COVID, etc., with load shedding, one of the issues now is going to be, are we going to have enough food? You know, how is load shedding going to affect that food coming into the system? So those are many of the challenges. I mean, some of the work that we've done, again, looking at a systems approach, has been to understand what the city does in the food space. And after a whole lot of analysis of various city mandates and policies, etc., we realized that there were something like 44 plus activities within the city of Cape Town that intersected with food. And we had to kind of take this approach because the city of Cape Town doesn't have an agriculture mandate. That sits with a different sphere of government. But with 44 other entry points, we've been busy and trying to influence things like spatial planning. You know, what is food sensitive planning? And we've managed to integrate that, the concept, into our spatial planning documents, as well as this notion of food systems within, and the food systems program, which is not a notion, it's a real thing, into our 5-year plan. Ours being the City of Cape Town's integrated development plan. So we've matured the program and the thinking quite significantly over those 5 years. I think it is 4 years, and a lot of the work has been about just getting to understand what food is within a local government space, and we've done a lot of that work through working groups. We have a food systems working group in the City of Cape Town, which has external as well as internal, and academics and various spheres of government, as well as in an internal forum called the Food Indaba, which is limited to city folk, where we actually had one the week before last on food and load shedding, trying to understand what the implications are of a stage 8 specifically event in Cape Town. And through these engagements, and we have as well as a research community of practice, and through these engagements, we've managed to kind of plant seeds with various departments. So our guys working in economic development have started to recognize the importance of the informal sector and markets and trading as part of food access. You know, something between 60 and 70% of Cape Townians get their food through the informal sector. So, you know, what is government's role in that space? So much more of a high level compared to Kisumu approach. And we're a very small team. So we kind of have to look at the policy and the strategy, and it's been about mainstreaming food systems into that broader framework. But we are also dropping down into more kind of programmatic work as well through implementation. Yes, looking forward to hearing some of the other cities' reflections. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks so much, Tamsin. I think you've deepened that point about how we need to connect with so many different stakeholders and officers within the city. I think food and understanding what types of food, how much food is moving through our cities is still elusive, because there are so many people moving food, selling it, processing it, growing it. And so you need, compared to many other resource types, many more people to help make sense of that story and how food moves in. And, you know, just to punt why we're here again, the food dialogues are really trying to tell the stories of food systems, and to dig deeper collectively around what's happening in the city of Cape Town. And we hope other cities are going to take forward these types of multi-stakeholder engagements as well. So to come back south, and then let's go east again. to Arusha in Tanzania. Onesmo, I wonder if you can tell us a little bit about the work that you're doing in Arusha, some of the things you're grappling with and what you think has been quite successful.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Paul. Thank you for this opportunity again to share you about the food system in Arusha. Arusha now is a bit cold. We are still struggling, but the only thing which we are doing in Arusha now, or which have been done with the food system. First of all, we try to come to the food problem and challenges of food system in Arusha. There are about 3 of them: food system and the nutrition insecurity due to rapid urbanization and climate change, also the infestation of pests and diseases. Another thing is access to health and affordable food. And the last one is food safety. The thing which we are doing in order to cover those challenges on food system, first of all, we have been doing the setup of food pathways to guide the food actors on the Arusha food system transformation. When we say to set up the pathways, we mean that those pathways will provide solutions to food system challenges and to guide the vendors on how to go about on sensitization, inclusion of women and youth on part of agri-food system and waste reuse and the recovery. Also the school feeding programs. Those are the things which are doing in order to cover the food and the nutrition insecurity. Another thing which we are doing is formation of multi-sectoral platforms. Those to govern the food system transformation, that is sustainable food system platforms. On these platforms, we are doing in order to make the youth be included in those food activities in Arusha. Also to include the women's, especially those in groups. We make them or training or also the capacity building on part of food systems. Also, on part of this category of which we are doing is to manage those food risks, and especially the food risk assessments on vegetable and fruits. At this part, we are trying to educate those food actors or food vendors in the market to participate on proper handling of those foods, especially the fruits and the other type of foods in the market, by establishing the food kiosk. I think you know the food kiosk doesn't mean. Also to govern to make awareness on the food actors or food handlers on the proper food handling or safety handling of the food system issues. Also to have the other things we are doing is the youth programs that to support the youth technical and financially towards innovating sustainable food business models, solution different to food system challenges. Those are the things which we are doing in order to make the food pathway good. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Onesmo. And I think on our visit to Arusha a while back, we were really excited by the work that you were doing around the revolving loans given to women, youth, and people with disabilities to establish and support their own enterprises. And what was really exciting was that
You are welcome. Welcome.
the way that people were using these resources was to demonstrate in a way that food was, for the youth, a cool way to make money, was a way to build their own business, and to excite their peers to participate in what has traditionally been looked at by young people as a rural or not very enriching profession. So there was something really notable about trying to mainstream food systems. And Rosa's earlier point about getting university students excited about food, I think, touches on that. I wonder, Rose, you alluded to wanting to share some of the solutions you had about getting officers more engaged in food work. But before I hand over to you, I'd just like to invite everyone who's joining us as part of the session. If you would like to ask a question of our panelists or make comments, please do throw some ideas into chat or use the Q&A function. And I'll do my best to relay these questions to our speakers, or we can follow up after our session as well. But Rose, you mentioned some of the things that you thought were working with getting more officers across the county engaged in food systems. And I think based on what others have shared about building multi-stakeholder platforms or multi-stakeholder engagement, what's your experience in Kisumu been of that?
Thank you, Paul, for allowing me time again. In Kisumu County, through collaboration, we came up with a system called the CBC, the community-based coaches. Community-based coaches are not only the trained agriculture staff, but it also involves those trained agriculture staffs that are out, not in employment, but are out helping people in the community. So bringing them together to train them by by some other stakeholders and even the county on what we want done gives them the power and authority. We even gave them certificates now to work with the people at the local, at the communities where we are not able to reach, or even where we are able to reach, but they are able to reach ahead of us. So we ask people to reach them for any queries that they have on the issues of agriculture and nutrition. So in the county, we managed to train in every sub-county. In every sub-county up to the lowest level, we were able to train like even 3 or 4 per sub-county with the assistance of collaborators. Then we also have the nutrition champions. Through a collaborator and the government, we were able to train nutrition champions. We train nutrition champions on production of the local vegetables and any other food, but preferably the local vegetables, because they are easier to understand and their production also takes a short time. And this is where the high dense nutrients are for the people we are targeting, especially for the expectants and children age 0 to 5. So those ones, we trained them to train people in the hotels, for the hotels to be able to offer nutritive foods, not really just junk, but to offer nutritive foods to their people at the hotels. And that we did together with the stakeholders. So the multi-stakeholder forum that we had, we have the MSN, the multi-sectoral nutrition body, that is bringing all the sister departments plus any other organization that is dealing on issues to do with food. And again, we have the FLAG. FLAG is Food Liaison Advisory Group, but we are now turning it into a council because we thought that that is more powerful than the word group. This is also bringing all stakeholders in the county dealing with food issues. And here we are able to discuss issues that we have on food production at least for people to get nutritive food at the end through all the value chains. Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Rose. I mean, that's really exciting. And we've seen across Kenya a number of initiatives working on developing flags as well, to draw multiple stakeholders in to connect with local government. And I think it's really brave to say as a local government that we're not going to solve all of the issues, but we recognize that we have a role, and how can we be a facilitator in engaging people around this work. So thanks for that. I also really like the reflection on training people about what's nutritious. And there's an argument that the current nutrition transition that we're in, where people are moving away from whole foods towards mainly sugars, simple sugars and fats, is due to an aspiration for fast food or things like that. But the argument that we're making as a consortium is that the infrastructure that people have access to means they don't want to pay a lot of money for energy. Time is also precious, and so what types of foods can we make quickly? And that leads us to more fast food. So by demonstrating that you can use local produce which grows fast, and can cook local foods in quick ways that can also be nutritional, I think is really valuable. Tamsin, I want to invite you again. So go ahead, Rose.
Yeah, and Paul, by doing that, these are young people, the youths, who at one time ran away from the local foods. So they are now being trained on these foods. So the young people, they're also spreading the message to the fellow young people. So there'll be that continuity in the consumption of such foods.
I think that's great. And the idea of reimagining what these foods can be in a different way, or if we're a fan of watching cooking competitions, how to elevate these foods in interesting ways. And I know that we've seen some colleagues in the food dialogues who are showing us just that. So Tamsin, I'd like to invite you again with this kind of question of time. You work on resilience, which is trying to deal with very present shocks. So you've mentioned load shedding, but also trying to improve the ability of people in the city as well as the city itself to react to shocks and changes in the long term. And I wonder if you could reflect a little bit about the strategies that you're implementing now or trying to develop now, which are both attempting to address these sudden immediate shocks, but also to chart a long-term food security journey.
I was hoping for an easy question, but I suppose it's the polycrisis, so there's no easy question. And thank you for that, because I didn't mention that in my little blurb. It is this thing of being able to respond when there's a disaster, but then it's also about how you maintain that ongoing work to build food and nutritional security. I think after COVID, we did a bit of a reflection on how the city responded from a food perspective. And there was a broad recognition that we need to put more work into how we respond during a crisis. And what has been apparent through all these, successive shocks is that no matter what it is, food is somehow part of the issue that then evolves afterwards. So, humanitarian response is really important, and it is a big part of the work that we're hoping to take forward. It's been shaped up. It's just kind of sitting on a back burner, but it's going to move on to a front burner soon. And that's looking at a very complex environment with multi-stakeholders, government stakeholders, government partners, funding arrangements, etc. So that's kind of looking at the shock event. In terms of some of the ongoing work, through the AfriFood links, we're hoping, and with my SOCO colleague Onesmo, and she's not on the call, my colleague from the markets, and how we can, which is an infrastructure investment, but it's also a management issue. How does government manage markets, and do we do it well, and could we be doing it differently, and should we be doing it? So that's kind of part of the longer term strategic thinking and priorities within the city, particularly, as I said, because of that really important role that the informal sector plays. in food access. I could keep going, but I don't want to hog the mic. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Emma. I think that point about infrastructure, which is such a long-term investment, that you have to make the choice right now about how it's going to shape the future, I think is really key. I think the adage in African urban development that we as urbanists are with is whatever we do now will shape the next half century. If we're going to lay infrastructures, how do we lay infrastructures which lock us in to good, sustainable, equitable systems? And so I think thinking deeply about how food can play a role in shaping those cities in the future is really valuable. Onesmo, I wonder if you might reflect a little bit on some of the emerging lessons from the multi-stakeholder platforms. You know, what have you found are some unexpected lessons? What have you found that you've learned from your engagements with stakeholders in Arusha? Sorry, you're on mute, Onesmo. Onesmo, you're on mute.
Thank you very much, Mr. Paul. Also,
yeah, all good.
On the information, the thing which we have got from engaging multi-stakeholder platform, this system is bringing us it governs the food system transformation in Arusha, because we have five working groups in this platform. We have the part of safe food production, consumer sensitization, food safety regulations, youth in agriculture, city planning, and the logistics. Those are the five working groups which we have in the multi-stakeholder platform. And this normally we come into regular meetings. We have planned for after 3 months or quarterly, we meet after quarter, so that we come together and all the working groups, they come together in a selected location, and one of them is termed the mwenyekiti or the chairman, so that they come together and discuss some issues which arises to different working groups during that time of working. So on this part of multi-stakeholder platform, we gain experiences from those groups after coming together, sharing those experiences, and they come to and making the solution toward those challenges obtained from those working groups. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Onesmo. I see that Eric from Ouagadougou has joined us. Bonjour. I wonder, Eric, we're coming to the end of our first round of discussions with cities, but if you could share some of your reflections, take us to Ouagadougou. What are the key challenges you're facing around food systems in Ouaga, and what are some of the successes that you think that the city has had in driving food systems change? Welcome.
Merci, Paul. Merci, bonjour à tous. Je suis désolé parce qu'ici il pleut, donc certainement que vous entendez un bruit de fond et ça risque d'être un peu gênant. Mais bon, si vous m'entendez, je pense que je vais y aller. Alors, en ce qui
Perfect,
concerne...
please proceed.
D'accord. En ce qui concerne la ville de Ouagadougou, il faut dire que chez nous, les systèmes alimentaires ne sont pas encore vraiment structurés au niveau de la ville de Ouagadougou. Donc, à travers ce projet-là, c'est vraiment une opportunité pour nous de voir comment on peut construire un modèle qui est adapté à la ville de Ouagadougou. Pour le moment, ce que nous sommes en train de faire est encore de façon vraiment informelle, parce que nous avons été confrontés à une difficulté, parce que nous avions ce qu'on appelle la ceinture verte, et pendant longtemps, elle n'a pas été mise en valeur. Et nous avons profité donc de l'opportunité depuis 2018 où des acteurs industriels, des entreprises se sont intéressés à accompagner la ville de Ouagadougou pour investir afin de pouvoir récupérer cet espace-là. Donc, nous avons donc initié l'agroforesterie. À côté, nous avons développé le maraîchage pour permettre à des femmes de pouvoir, en même temps qu'elles entretiennent les plantes, de pouvoir développer des activités dans le domaine du maraîchage pour approvisionner la ville de Ouagadougou en produits maraîchers et en produits frais. Alors, donc ça, c'était une politique vraiment sectorielle que nous avons développée. Et nous nous sommes rendus compte que de plus en plus, c'est un domaine dans lequel il faut aller, mais il faut véritablement construire toute la chaîne pour ne pas seulement intervenir sur un seul aspect, mais pour toute la chaîne de valeur des systèmes alimentaires. Donc, actuellement, nous sommes en train de travailler avec un certain nombre d'acteurs. Vous avez vu qu'à Kisumu, nous sommes venus avec pas mal d'acteurs qui nous accompagnent. Et chaque acteur investit dans un domaine bien déterminé. Mais ce que nous sommes en train de faire, c'est vraiment de pouvoir élaborer une politique alimentaire où nous allons véritablement tracer les sillons de ce que nous voulons faire en tirant l'expérience des autres villes à travers le projet AfriFood Links pour pouvoir bâtir un système propre à la ville de Ouagadougou. Parce que les besoins que nous avons dépassent en fait le cadre de l'approvisionnement de la ville en produits maraîchers. Nous avons également des besoins dans le domaine de l'alimentation en milieu scolaire. Nous avons un service qui est en charge de l'hygiène, qui fait des contrôles non seulement au niveau des restaurants dans la ville de Ouagadougou, mais également au niveau des écoles. Mais derrière, on n'a pas un système en fait pour aider les acteurs à pouvoir développer leurs activités et à pouvoir mieux s'organiser. Donc, nous avons besoin donc de nous inspirer de l'expérience d'autres villes pour pouvoir construire dans ce secteur-là. Et nous sommes en train de réfléchir déjà à certains projets pour voir comment on peut créer une connexion entre la production qui se fait sur la ceinture verte et l'amélioration de la nutrition dans les écoles. Aujourd'hui, l'État accompagne les collectivités, la ville de Ouagadougou faisant partie, avec des vivres, mais il n'y a pas d'accompagnement. Quand on regarde la qualité des repas qui sont servis, c'est vraiment de façon... Ce n'est pas des repas nutritifs. Voilà, donc nous sommes en train de voir comment on peut améliorer ces repas à travers donc la production qui se fera sur la ceinture verte pour pouvoir alimenter les écoles. Voilà. Dans ce cadre-là, nous travaillons déjà avec certains partenaires, dont l'ONG Accra. Et bientôt, nous allons mettre en œuvre un certain nombre d'activités dans ce sens-là. Voilà. Il y a également l'alimentation de rue dans laquelle nous sommes en train de développer un programme avec ADU pour pouvoir organiser les acteurs à ce qu'il y ait plus d'hygiène autour des marchés pour donc aider assainir ce milieu. Mais là, on n'a pas encore développé un programme clair, mais c'est un besoin qui est là, c'est une priorité pour nous, parce que c'est souvent source donc, de certaines maladies, et il faut mieux organiser ce secteur pour aller de l'avant. Donc, voici ce que je pouvais dire par rapport aux priorités de la ville de Ouagadougou. Mais je pense qu'il nous faut vraiment un document de politique dans le domaine pour pouvoir donc orienter les actions. Sinon, pour le moment, nous travaillons de façon un peu aux besoins et ce n'est pas vraiment très organisé. Merci.
Thanks, Eric. I think you've shared a wealth of really interesting work that you're doing, and I think it aligns with what a number of our colleagues have shared. And I think food tends to be stretched over many different sectors and departments and require many people, so it is a bit messy. But I think the fact that you've made a commitment as Ouagadougou to engage it is really exciting. So I think there are some really fabulous questions that have been posed in the Q&A box. I'm going to invite our panelists to respond to them, particularly the very large ones, such as how do we create a vision of food systems? And I think those are going to be different across all cities. But I would like to do just a minute each reflection briefly on some really targeted questions. So Rose, you spoke about having champions in the community. I think that's fabulous that we've seen that in many cities. Someone has asked, how are you incentivizing these champions and how do you make these champions a sustainable process in communities? And then Onesmo, can you tell us a little bit more about the food safety regulations and how you're training the food handlers? So what incentive systems have motivated the farmers, the traders to adopt safe practices? So first Rose and then Onesmo.
Thank you, Paul,
Yeah, Rose, your internet is a bit unstable, so I think we're going to move to Onesmo, and when you come back.
Indeed, it is a challenge.
So, Onesmo, while we wait for Rose's system to come back, maybe you can reflect on the incentives for ensuring that food safety regulations get taken up.
Thank you very much, Mr. Paul. In order to make those food system be sustainable on part of food policy and the other regulations, first of all is to advocate the food policy for Arusha system being aligned with those with the national food systems. To this part, we normally, for us now, we have the government policy say that they provide the incentive for the fertilizers and seeds for those smallholder farmers, in order for them to afford to buy those fertilizers and seeds. It is a national security now to put incentive on those in order to regulate the cost of buying those fertilizers and seeds. And another is to engage the informal sector, informal food actors in the multi-sectoral processes to ensure the diverse of members and inclusions. Those are the things which can encourage for the sustainability of those policies and regulations. And here in the city, we have the government officials putting some emphasis on those smallholder farmers in order to enforce or to facilitate those incentives to reach to those farmers. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Nesmo. Rose, shall we try again? I hope your internet is back. If you could share briefly how are you incentivizing champions in the community and making that a sustainable process? You're on mute. Please unmute yourself.
So thank you. Thank you. Well, I'm happy again that I'm back. It is indeed a challenge, but we haven't experienced it so much because what we do, we ask these people when they go to train these people on whatever little they have. It is now these people to see the farmers, to see what they can do for these people. But the youth that we have, they are excited. They have that kind of excitement because when we engage them like that, if we need any trainings for the state from the other collaborators, these are the people we use. For example, tomorrow, we will be having a 2 days training somewhere. So we choose from the active CBCs, these young people that we've identified for such kind of trainings, and it is usually an excitement for them. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So,
and the fact that we also give them certificates, the fact that we give them certificates signed by the CEC, our topmost person in agriculture, adds them value. So when they are looking for other engagements, and especially those that have come out from colleges, when they are looking for employment, these ones they add to their CVs. So we find them excited. Such. Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks, Rose. So I'm going to take this opportunity to thank our first round of panelists from the cities. Please stay online because we'll come back to you for a reflection of what you've made of the whole discussion. And please do have a look at the Q&A box because there's some fabulous questions in there which I really do want to ask. So I think we'll shift to our next panel and ask them some of these hard questions. I'd like to invite our further colleagues, Lucky Brian, who's working with the Food Rights Alliance in Uganda, Joachim Wechu, co-founder and CEO of Shona in Uganda, Jalila El Ati, research and planning at the Institut National de Nutrition et de Technologie Alimentaire in Tunisia, and Cécile Michel, who's in the Secretariat of the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact. Great to see you all online. So what's really exciting about the work that we are going on as colleagues is that we're bringing together multiple stakeholders in our project work. So not just preaching that we need to engage multiple stakeholders at city level, but really trying to engage with researchers, with people working on enterprise development, with people trying to build governance platforms, with those who are embedded in global advocacy. And so I think our four speakers who've joined us here exemplify each of those different elements, which is really exciting. And only by looking at the linkages between this work can we really start to profile and drive the change that we need. So I'd like to start with each of you, just first kind of 3 minutes each. What have you heard from our city colleagues that strikes you as interesting and worth just highlighting? And then as food system actors working in this space, what are you grappling with? And what do you think is the most important thing that you're working with to drive food system change? So why don't we start with Lucky, if you could share with us some reflections from what you've heard.
Thank you very much, Paul and colleagues, for joining this platform. My name is Lucky Walker. I work with Food Rights Alliance as the head of program quality and partnerships. Reflecting on that question, in Uganda here, we are facing a challenge of urbanization. And of course, we have the food systems as a new approach everywhere. So it is a big challenge, and the issue of food systems is one of the areas that is not prioritized as we look at the issue of urbanization. So it is one of the challenge if you look at the macro economics within the country. And of course, it is affecting the cities where we're working as the Afro-Food Links partner. You look at Uganda as a country, they approved the new cities in addition to Kampala city. And this has a challenge. I mean, this has an impact on the urban food system, of course, because there are many things involved in there. People are moving from villages to cities, and you know, the issue of land distribution. So there are many challenges around urbanization, and we realize that food system is one of the areas that is not really prioritized. So we think it is one of the challenge. Then the other one is around the national budgets. So in Uganda, the budgeting system is central. So we have a central budgeting system, and it limits the ability of the local authorities to utilize the funds that may be allocated to them to undertake the various interventions in line with the food system. So for example, the city where we work in Mbale, they only receive restricted funds. So the budgeting is done at a national level, that is central, and you see the funds allocated to the different cities, local authorities, districts is very limited. So you find that it is very hard to do budgeting for the food system, the urban food systems. So it is another kind of challenge where you find that there are limited resources to do the planning, maybe the implementation of interventions around transforming the urban food system in the different parts of the country. The other issue is the local, domestic local revenue collection. You find that in the different parts of the country, there are authorities, they collect revenue, and you find that those revenues are taken back to the consolidated fund of the center, that is at national level. So you find that the different authorities in the different parts are struggling with the limited resources allocated to them to do the planning, implementation of the different policies and interventions, programs, and it is really a big challenge. And those districts and cities cannot determine on how to use their own resources, because after collecting, it is taken into the consolidated fund.
Yeah.
So to me, those are some of the key challenges we are facing here.
Thanks, Lucky. I mean, you've hit the nail on the head, and thank you for bringing the conversation about finances and resources in, because often when we're talking about governance and bringing people together, there's a lot of positivity and visioning, and then we forget the question: how are we paying for this? How are we actually mobilizing resources together? And I think you've really hit on a really interesting tension, which is what we're seeing in many countries across the continent: is this devolution of responsibilities, or in Uganda, the creation or demarcation of new cities, and all of the political responsibility that goes with it. But then the resources are not allocated to allow the cities to actually fulfill their responsibilities. And that tension is there. And then you add the layer of food, which you say is not prioritized. And I think that's in many cities, the idea of city, we have nothing to do with food, you know, but as Tamsin sort of argued right in the beginning, it's how do we find the mandate for food in each of our other offices and departments. And there really is a responsibility for food at local level, but central government might not believe so. And so I think that's what I'm really excited for the work that we're doing together to really make these arguments and take them to national level, to regional level. I'd like to invite Jalila to reflect as a researcher working for a while in Tunis's food system. What is your role? What have you heard from the cities? And what do you think are the important intervention points? Jalila, you're on mute.
I am mute.
Great.
Thank you. Before speaking about Tunis City, I would like to give my opinion about the discussion we had on about Kisumu, Cape Town, Arusha, Ouagadougou. We discover with our panelists, we discover many challenges, many difficulties, many issues that are both common and specific to every country. So this means that the solutions, there is no one solution. The solution will be adapted to every specific context of the country. That's about the precedent session. Now, before answering your question, Paul, let me first start with a brief presentation of Tunis City. Tunis City is the capital and the largest city of Tunisia, a North African country. With its 2.7 million inhabitants out of the 12 million, Tunisia is a vibrant center of political, economic, social, and cultural activities. Tunis City is currently experiencing a growing population as the result of an important rural-urban migration. And this migration is set in a context, very difficult economic context. In fact, poverty, unemployment remain very high, and the informal sector is emerging more and more, dampening fragile economy in the country. In addition, and at the national level, about the third of Tunisians are suffering from food insecurity, highlighting the food vulnerability in the country. Many factors underline this situation. I can cite some of them: natural resource degradation, climate change, also dependency on rain-fed agriculture, food import dependence, and all these factors in turn contribute to food shortage and high food prices in the country, and specifically in Tunis City. So the main challenge for Tunis City now is to create aggregate conditions in which households and individuals can gain access to healthy, nutritious, and affordable foods. To concretize this challenge, Tunis City have to lead with the macro level challenges. There are several macro level challenges, and I can cite some of them. The first one, the first one is the need to the decentralized decision making to local level, to Tunis city level, in order to ensure the autonomy in operational and strategic decision, and this is lack in Tunis. The second one is about the mobilization of human, financial, and technical resources which are crucial for any changing food system. And the last one for me is the setting up of a real partnership between all stakeholders of the multi-sectoral framework of the food system. I can then after talk with you about some of other success story realized in Tunis City.
Fabulous. Shall we pause and we'll come back to reflect on your role and some of those successes?
Yes.
Great. So let me invite Joachim, also from Uganda, to reflect on your role. What have you heard, and what do you see as your role in driving food systems transformation?
Hey everyone. Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to join you. So Shona is an East African organization. We help entrepreneurs across multiple industries to build successful businesses that positively benefit society in East Africa. And we do this by providing them with the capacity building, capital, and networks that they need to grow. We currently implement a portfolio of initiatives focused on the food system in East Africa, including our direct work with agribusinesses and programs that are targeting entrepreneurs that are building businesses in regenerative agriculture, agroecology, circular agribusiness, and then contributing to food smart cities. So I think one of the things that we see, I think that's obvious, as our cities expand, and my colleagues have already touched on this, as our cities expand, you increasingly see that there is this kind of disconnect or gap between the people that produce our food, that are mostly based outside our cities, and the people that consume this food that are based in the cities. This population is growing as well. And so when you're thinking about safe and healthy food in our cities, you need to look at kind of, how do we produce our food? And, the people that are consuming are not producing this food. How do we process our food? How do we transport our food from the producers to the markets? How do we market and retail our food? How do we consume our food? And then how do we do all this while the people that are involved in production and helping get this food to our tables, to our mouths, are meaningfully benefiting from their labor, and as well while we keep the cost of food affordable for everyone, right? So that becomes the big challenge. And so when you think about the work that we do in places like Uganda, you have that there emerges, because of the gaps that exist. We have entrepreneurs who are emerging, who are identifying gaps and opportunities and filling these gaps with their businesses. And they're offering new ideas to how we produce food, all the way to how we help consumers get this food. And so you find that these entrepreneurs are helping local governments in some of their roles, when you think about that, to reach some of those roles. And so as you think about food as well, and reflecting from the previous panel, when you think about food systems, there are a lot of different players that need to come together to enable all this, right? To enable that, we're consuming our food. So you have the private sector, you have the local government, you have civil society organizations, you have government itself. And my reflection from the previous panel is, as you think about all these different players, how do you define the role that each of them plays in a smart way, so that you're able to enable and you're not creating additional bureaucracy, you're not dismantling the work of some of the other players. For example, entrepreneurs are building businesses to fill these gaps. So in a way, how are we careful about what we wish for, and smartly defining those roles to enable everyone contribute to helping consumers access safe, healthy, and nutritious food.
Great. I have two questions then on that. You've put a lot of hows in there, and the reflections then on well, how are you doing it, and what businesses could you give us examples of? And then you use the word, I mean, among many of the buzzwords we're using, circular and otherwise, of food smart cities. And so I'm going to come back to you in a bit about those two elements. I think the narrative so far has really complemented. We had Lucky talking about what's happening in Uganda, of the decentralization without the finances and the deprioritization of food. We've got Jalila saying, well, this is what needs to happen in Tunis as well, decentralize decision-making for better autonomy, but you must do it also with finances, and also you need partnerships. And now Joachim has said entrepreneurs are coming as key partners to bridge some of the gaps that local governments are facing with lack of resources. So I think that's where we are right now. I think I'd like to step us now into a global governance perspective and invite Cecile, if you can reflect on what you've heard, but also being steeped in a lot of global discourses and movements around food systems. What is your role at MUFPP?
Thank you, Paul, for inviting me, and thanks very much to all the other panelists and participants for fabulous insights. Well, I think that we have quite well listed all the main challenges, lack of political support. I would add also lack of robust data set paired with the indicators, because without this understanding, resources cannot be distributed effectively and equitably. Lack of political mandate in food, resulting of lack of a decentralization, as said, and also lack of funding, in addition to all the other main macro challenges, such as the growing of urban population, climate crisis, long and inefficient supply chains, and cities are so often seen and perceived as the culprit, right? However, I would like to highlight the fact that cities can also be can also have the answers and the capacity, and I would add also the responsibility in addressing those issues. In our experience within the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact, we support cities and we push cities in adopting different policies and decisions within the city administration to address those challenges. For example, with a strong political will and political mandate, a city can facilitate the collaboration across cities, agencies, and departments, and also to seek alignment of policy and programs that impact the food system. For example, by having dedicated staff, resources and staff, this can make food as a priority. And I cannot highlight this enough, that this person or office should be embedded into an apical position within the city administration, such as the mayor's office or similar. And this is really helpful in ensuring a better cross-departmental collaboration and information flow. But also cities can enhance stakeholder participation. We have mentioned this before, through political dialogue that can take different forms, such as food dialogues, food boards, or food councils, but also identify, evaluate, and map local initiatives of civil society food movement. They are on the ground, they know what's happening on the ground, and the city have the possibility to scale up those initiatives and really make the change.
Thanks, Cecile. I think that's really right. And a lot of the arguments we make around why we need to move resources to city level is because mayors and city officials are closer to the citizens. And your point you've added here, cities also then need to engage with community and civil society organizations because they're even closer and have specific mandates from citizens about what needs to be done. And so for that to happen, there needs to be much clearer understanding of how city systems work, how civil society organizations are mobilizing. So I think let's do another round. I think Lucky, you indicated some of the challenges in Uganda, but maybe if you could reflect a little bit more on how the work that you're doing at Food Rights Alliance is unlocking some of this change, a bit more of the detail of what your work is actually attempting to do. Lucky, you're on mute.
Thank you very much. As Food Rights Alliance, we're in Mbale City, like I said. We are trying to create space or a platform for food systems actors in the city to ensure that we create an enabling environment and in a bid to transform the food systems of Mbale City. So we have been able to create some platforms. Of course, we are known for coordinating actors. So within coordination mechanism, we are trying to come up with a platform. We call it the Good Food Parliament. It is a combination of various actors in the food system to ensure that we come and collectively plan and make decisions together. So in line with this, we are trying to connect our work to the National Food Systems Coordination Committee. This is a government formed or created platform as a result of the Food Systems Summit in September 2021, because it also involves various actors and it is coordinated by the Office of the Prime Minister. So we are trying to create our own platform in the city where we're working. And so far we have managed to conduct a number of multi-stakeholder engagements, and we have documented a number of issues as a result of the discussions. But we noted that we need to link our work right from the level, working with the local authorities. So we came up with a council, a team of 15 people. We call it the Good Food Council. This now plans for the parliament, that is the multi-stakeholder platform. So we do the planning, we propose topics of discussion, we implement interventions and actions from the multi-stakeholder platform. So among them, we have had the terms of references developed for the Good Food Council to guide the implementation of our interventions as we try to transform the urban food system in Mbale City. So recently, just last week on Thursday, we had one of our second parliamentary session, and a number of issues were highlighted. So we are trying to identify that key priority issue that we are going to work on, because we don't want these platforms to be just a platform of making noise, lamenting without actions. So we identify that key priority issue that we're going to work on, then we start and bring it back for discussions, improvements, input, approvals, such that whatever we do is interlinked with other engagements that are being undertaken in the city.
Thanks, Lucky.
Yes, so
if I can ask then, I think you've hit on one really great thing, which is making sure that you identify a specific action to take forward. I think that's really valuable. There's some questions around how you do this interaction at multi-level, at multi-stakeholder governance. If you can reflect for just 30 seconds, what do you think is the most important thing to consider when bringing stakeholders together, and how you do that? It may be the selecting the priorities, but what for you is the most important thing?
The most important thing is representation of voices. So we make sure that we bring those vulnerable people, affected people, such that their voices are heard. Secondly, we are focusing on creating awareness before we come into policy or governance, because those policies will support those various actors in the food system. So we want to understand the culture that they are working within. We want to understand their pressing needs. Then after, we shall come into policy formulation, because there are a number of gaps in line with that.
Thanks so much, Lucky. Jalila, so you gave us the context of Tunis and the 3 priorities. What is your role in this as a researcher and an actor in the food system? And what are some of the solutions that are emerging?
Yes, thank you, Paul. Maybe I can talk about some of our success story regarding the food system. The first one is about the reduction of salt in bread. We worked and we supported some baker, and they reduce the salt content in their bread by 30%, and we offer them a luminous sign. They fixed it on their premises, saying that this bakery is implied in the program of reduction of salt in foods. In the other hand, we supported also some agri-food industrial. Why we do this? Because in Tunis city, the main food activities is industrial agri-food and industry, about 80% of food activities. So we focus on agri-food industry, and we work of some of them to reduce the salt, sugar, and fat in their products, and we offer them a logo, a clear logo, simple, indicate that this food is healthy and the consumer can choose it. On the other hand, the municipality of Tunis worked on the production of food, and they plant some of vegetable garden in Tunis, Belvedere, to a community vegetable garden to produce vegetable foods with affordable prices for the community. So, honestly, the situation in Tunis city is very worse, and we have some program, some strategy. We are Cecile. We are in the Milan Act, and we haven't progressed since 2017, since we signed this pact. We haven't progressed because we have some political and economic and security difficulties. So I think that that agri-food links as projects with the researchers can make and do real action, real success experience in the field in Tunis, because the voluntary is here. We would like to improve our situation, but we lack some ingredients like financial, like technicity, like human resources, etc.
Yeah. Thanks, Jalila. I think, again, the detail of some of those interventions, I think, stresses how focused you have to be when you want to intervene. So thank you for sharing the successes. Joachim, can you share with us briefly food smart cities and some examples of precisely what your work with entrepreneurs is doing to equip them? We've also had a question which I'm going to tag onto you, but recognize it might need more time. How do you mitigate against big food or large corporate interests in some of the work that you're doing? And I will also ask another colleague to reflect on that. So I'd love to reflect very briefly.
Yeah, so I'll start with, so like I mentioned, our work is about identifying these high potential entrepreneurs and then providing them with the capacity building, capital and networks that they need to grow. I'll give 2 examples of businesses we've worked with. One is a company that aggregates milk from smallholder farmers and sells to medium and large milk processors, working through formal milk collection centers that are installed with chilling and quality management equipment. And so we started our work with them, and we've been able to provide them with some money in direct investment, capacity building, and now they've been able to expand their collections from farmers and are now diversifying into processing milk into other products like yogurt, for example. Another is a company we've worked with that's developing modern decentralized storage and logistics infrastructure and technology to source, store, and market high quality grains and oil seeds, focusing on the cassava and maize value chains initially. So, identified, hello? Oh yeah, I'm back.
We're with you.
Oh, okay, so I identify the company and we're able to provide the same as well to them, and they're reaching sourcing from over 5,000 smallholder farmers. So those are a few examples of some of the work we've done. So with regard to Food Smart Cities, this is a partnership, a program partnership we have with Ricolto, a Belgian NGO, where we're working with them in partnership with 2 cities in Uganda, that's Mbale City and Gulu City, to help identify high potential youth-led agribusinesses that are building their businesses to provide healthy, safe, and nutritious food for the residents of those cities. So they're providing access to that's our working, contributing to Food Smart Cities in Mbale, to a Food Smart City in Mbale and Gulu cities. This initiative is in partnership with the local government, and we've enjoyed our relationship with them, giving us the access to these entrepreneurs and also providing us with an enabling environment to enable the operation of this program to support these young entrepreneurs.
Thanks, Joachim.
There's a question on, yes, go ahead.
So I must beg the indulgence of our panelists and some of our attendees as well. We crammed the session full of really interesting people and ideas, and so I'm going to beg your indulgence to go 10 minutes over our time so we can have a closing reflection from everyone. So Joachim, do you want to take those extra 30 seconds on that question?
Yes, how do you mitigate big food companies? So I think, our job is, it's a question we have, but our job is, identifying up and coming businesses and helping them grow. And we've done a good job successfully doing that. I think one of the things that you find is a lot of their customers are some of these big food companies, which is an advantage and a disadvantage because of the monopolies there. It's something we're interested in learning from the others, how you do that.
Thanks very much, Joachim. Cecile, so I think to that point of shared challenges across these contexts, what do you think then is the value and the role of having a network of cities that can engage each other in creating collective voice, but also in learning from each other?
Yeah, I think this is very valuable, and I believe that this is also part of the reasons why the participation of city networks is increasing. I'm not referring also only to the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact, but from our experience, it is like this. I believe that even if many cities are facing different challenges and are from different contexts, we do somehow have to deal with some similar challenges. And as city governments, we do have similar administrative constraints, administrative tools that we can have. So really, creating an enabling environment for not only for cities, not only for the political level, but also and especially for the officers level, it is very valuable. Strengthening the capacity and the capabilities of city officials really helps them in sharing best practices and sharing knowledge, but also help ensuring continuous advocacy and pressure on local administration, even in case of administration changes. And so also in the case of lack of political support. And this really is something that you can observe over the time.
Thanks, Cecile. I think if we can go back through our panelists, and maybe Cecile, we'll start with you again. Just if there was one thing that people listening to this should take home with them, an action, an idea, what do you think is most important, given that our discussion has been around these overlapping crises, a lot of interdependent systems, and our main argument is that food can be a driver of broader societal change. So what is one thing that our participants should take home from this? If we can go through just a 30-second kind of reflection. Let's start with you again, Cecile.
All right. Well, as said before, cities are somehow the culprit of many of the things that need to be fixed in the urban food systems. But cities can be also part of the solution, of the answer. As you said, they are the closer level of governance to the citizens and to communities. And so they are really perfectly and strategically positioned to answer those challenges. So they have the capabilities and I would say also the responsibility to do so.
Thanks. Lucky?
Thank you very much. Mine is in terms of, it is a long term. We need to undertake a food systems assessment. We evaluate whether the system has the resources in terms of funding. Do we have the funding streams, necessary resources in terms of finances to sustain it? Ensure that the funds are well coordinated and enable the various actors identify and know their roles, and we collaborate and transform our food systems.
Thanks very much. Everyone needs to know their roles, and I know from your experience in this, that's often a navigation and a lot of discussion and discourse to get there. Jalila?
Thanks, Paul. Yes, for me, maybe the point I retain is the crucial need for network that let key actors to share solutions, fails, to share challenges, to share difficulties and success story for common, both common and specific contexts regarding urban food. For me, it's really setting a network for key actors is crucial and essential.
Thanks, Jalila. Joachim?
Yeah, how do we strengthen the partnership between the private sector and local government and cities to enable access to safe, healthy, and nutritious food for citizens? Yeah, that's my reflection.
Short and sweet, fabulous. So I'd like to hand over to Cities now. I'll give you a minute instead of 30 seconds to reflect on two things, please. What have you heard from today? What should people take away from this? But also, what are you going to take forward in your work? And what are your next steps? So perhaps we can start with Tamsin.
Thanks, Paul. I think the thing that's kind of really struck me is how it's a lot of the discussions actually happened in the chat, you know, this role of big business and the kind of pernicious way that it undermines good food systems work. And how any kind of conversation around trying to limit that access is the pushback is constantly, oh, but it's jobs, we need jobs, it's economic development, it's, you know, jobs equals food security, etc., which, I mean, maybe not everyone on this call recognizes is not necessarily the equation. So it's recognizing what we can and can't do as cities, and that bigger context is super frustrating because there is that constant pushback, but also recognizing that, you know, because it's a food systems approach, there's so many different entry points and there's so many potential stakeholders and role players and partners, and you know, there is this coalition of the willing. So, you know, as a city, if there's something that you can't do within the sphere of influence that you have, you know, find partners who are able to influence those spaces. I can't actually give you any examples of that, although actually, no, Italy, I mean, you guys did some amazing research for us with the Cape Town Fish Produce Market, looking at different ways of enabling better trading for informal traders. So yeah, it's cities, we are the kind of the central point, but it is, you know, a lot of our work could actually be about leveraging other people's opportunities and networks and skills and whatnot. So yeah, working in coalitions rather than trying to do everything ourselves. Thanks.
Thanks. I think I just, you know, to add a teeny bit, I haven't managed to keep an eye fully on the chat, so glad that there have been some discussions there. I think that point on the coalition of the willing, but also being pragmatic. I think there's only so much we've spoken. Everyone has mentioned power dynamics and resources not flowing, or, you know, should be flowing, and so we work pragmatically in these spaces which are difficult to work in. Thanks so much, Eric. Yeah, can you give us a reflection on what you've heard, how this lands in Ouagadougou? What are you going to take forward? What struck you as interesting out of this conversation? Eric, am I coming through?
Oui, merci Paul. Alors, il y a beaucoup de bonnes propositions qui sont ressorties. Moi, je pense que d'abord, il faut réellement un engagement beaucoup plus accentué des villes dans le domaine des systèmes alimentaires pour qu'au niveau même des décideurs politiques, il y ait des engagements fermes pour accompagner la dynamique, pour que ça ne soit pas seulement une affaire de nous autres techniciens, mais que ce que nous sommes en train de faire soit vraiment porté au plus haut niveau pour pouvoir donc atteindre des résultats assez probants. Deuxièmement, quelqu'un l'a déjà souligné, il faut travailler également sur les réseautages, parce qu'au niveau des villes, on ne peut pas travailler sans impliquer les acteurs, soit de la société civile ou bien des entreprises, des ONG qui interviennent également dans ce domaine-là. Et dans beaucoup de villes, on n'a pas toujours une organisation qui permet de savoir qui fait quoi et comment on peut travailler en synergie pour pouvoir répondre aux besoins. Voilà. Donc, je pense que pour un début, ces deux aspects sont fondamentaux pour que nous puissions asseoir des dynamiques pour pouvoir donc avancer dans le domaine. Merci.
Merci, thank you, Eric, very much. I think the idea here is that you're also a political entity and taking what you know and work that you're doing to try and convince people to change. in the political sphere, I think is very important, and hopefully the networks that we're building can help you to do that as well. Onesmo, how is this landing for you? What's your feeling about what you'll take forward?
Thank you very much, Ms. Paul. To me, I think it is better. Most of the ideas have been said that we have to make collaboration between the different actors on this type of food system. We have said internetworking between those the cities ideas for the food system, and those ideas to coming together as one, and to disseminate them to those actors in the cities, like the NGOs and the political part, and we as a council officials to make them together, and then to use them for the future of urban food system is concerned. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think the point of sharing ideas, building better collaborations and cooperations is central to what we've discussed today. Rose, as our host in Kisumu, but also the starter of our conversation, what are you taking forward here?
Thank you, team. Thank you, Paul. For me, the gap that exists in leadership, especially at the cities, how can we make the leadership, no, not really the leadership, but how can we have people in the leadership to continue with whatever we are having even after the leadership goes away, so that we don't put everything under the leadership of the cities, who maybe after 5 years or a certain period of time they go away. So to me, if we can tackle that, then it would be okay. There'll be continuity. Then two, the assessment of happenings in the groups that, if we can actually deal with find the gaps on the issues that groups dealing on food systems are having, then we come together as a multi-stakeholder to assist them. We'll be able to really take our groups further. Thank you. Over to you, Paul.
Thanks very much. So I think the keywords there were continuity of leadership, and I think there was a question about this: how do you keep the city engaged? And I think you reported about diversifying who participates in those meetings, and then consistency. So how do we come together consistently to discuss our challenges and successes? So thank you very much, everyone, for a very rich conversation. I hope it's been food for thought, and I hope these ideas can be taken further. Just to thank the South African Urban Food and Farming Trust and the Food Dialogues team for putting together such a splendid program and inviting us as ICLEI Africa to participate and hold some elements of it. And finally, to our colleagues in the AfriFood Links project, it's such an exciting program to be participating with you in. And a big thank you to the European Union for investing their trust in us. And I think the idea of having an African-led consortium to engage on African issues cannot be underscored more. So big thank you for everyone who's joined us, and hope to see you in future engagements. Stay well.